Evil can come in many forms, covering many sectors and niches. But something that's important to take note is how this evil is presented. It's actually quite tricky to pull off when making a work of fiction, because while some of the best written characters are arguably villains, there are also times where it falls flat on its face. There are so many things that could go wrong when creating an entertaining villain. However, what if there was a way to take some aspects when creating a villain that would normally be seen as a detriment and find a way to make it make sense when creating said villain's personality and how they function? Enter in one Mr. Derrick Thompson. Derrick Thompson is a YouTube channel and ARG created by Derrick Tucker, sorry if I mispronounced your name, that centers around a character named Derrick, a leader of a cult, who frequently posts vlog-style videos talking about whatever's on his mind. The channel has recently received a good amount of attention due to its run of strange ads promoting the channel. I mean, it certainly caught me off guard. The channel itself has 2 playlists labeled Season 1 and Season 2, and there appears to be a satanic undertone with the banner and video thumbnails. There's also a link to the book written by the creator called The Infernal Ledger, whose description includes for 18 plus only. That seems wholesome. Looking back on my notes and my experience going through this, I feel like I put a little too much time when looking into this channel, because not only did I watch both playlists, which consisted of a total of over 120 videos, but I also looked into another channel that was attached to this, as well as purchasing a copy of the book. Things I do for these videos. So yeah, there's obviously a lot to go over, and I will be going into spoiler territory, so I highly suggest you check out the channel for yourself, as well as the book, which I will be linking in the description. I think it's best to piece together works like this at your own pace, and it's also nice to show support towards smaller creators. However, if you don't mind me spoiling things or hearing me give my interpretations and thoughts into what's going on story-wise, well then sit back and make yourselves comfortable, because we have a lot to talk about. So without further ado, here is the darkness and awkwardness as seen in the world of Derrick Thompson. So Season 1 was made around 2 years ago, and it pretty much gives a basic overview on Derrick Thompson. A lot of the videos here have a very interesting setup. They remind me of one of those awkward vlogs of someone filming inside their bedroom from, I don't know, 2009 or something. In the first video, titled I'm Here For You, we see Derrick shuffling around in the dark, acting all coy, being all positive and whatnot, which is a common theme with a few more videos that follow suit. Another thing that's worth noting is that Derrick seems to be very active in the comment section, leaving plenty of hearts and replies, and with the way Derrick is talking, he seems like a bit of a shy guy. So, you know, nothing too crazy to write home about. And yet there's something about him that's really throwing me off. When looking closely at the way he constantly shifts around, the way his mood changes, and even just how he talks at certain points, it feels like there's something much darker going on behind those eyes. In fact, when you look at the description in another video titled Take a Chance, we see a message in Morse code that reads, Eric is disobedient. Knowing where this is going, it seems like Eric is someone that isn't buying Derrick's friendly facade. Things start to take a noticeable turn once we get to learning something new, where Derrick mentions how the word obedience is misconstrued as being negative. And again, knowing where this is most likely gonna end up in, this talk of obedience is certainly giving some red flags. Things get even stranger in the next video, simply titled, where we hear what sounds like revving noises in the distance, followed by what sounds like a scuffle and a loud scream. And fun fact, according to Derrick, the creator, that scene was supposed to represent Derrick killing someone, with that scream being the murder victim, which I think is kind of funny because when I first viewed this, I thought Derrick was having an emotional breakdown, but no, this man just straight up committed a murder on camera. The lore deepens a bit more on submissiveness, where Derrick breaks down the roles of a community and how people who are submissive tend to cause less problems. My man Derrick isn't even concerned about hiding his controlling nature and might as well just be screaming, "Submit to me!" at the camera. There's also another hidden message, this time in a Caesar cipher, which translates to, "He promises you happiness, but at what cost?" Could this perhaps be a message from this Eric person? Maybe a warning about going down this path with Derrick? We'll just have to wait and see. In between some of these videos, there are what I'd like to call interludes, which mainly consists of shorts where Derrick shows or does something random. It's an interesting way to build up intrigue with the viewer with how outlandish they can get. They can range from a still image with atmospheric audio to something oddly amusing, such as Derrick singing songs like "I'm a Little Teapot." A personal highlight for me is when Derrick gives a demonstration on what happens to someone who lacks any direction on a wooden doll named Phil. By the way, keep an eye on Phil because we're going to be seeing him a lot moving forward. Another notable video to take note of is titled "My Friend," where we see Derrick brandishing a bloody knife, saying how he had to take care of someone and that the victim's sister is looking for him. I find it ironic how he gloats about how he covered his tracks as he's uploading this on the internet for everyone to see. Something I should also point out is how, in a comment where someone compares this video to the recordings of a cannibal, Derrick responds with some sort of recipe for a guest of honor. The recipe itself reads more like instructions on conducting emotional torture by stripping the soul of humanity, dignity, hope, and warmth until only trembling flesh of despair remains, and then cooking it over a flame, basting it with guilt and regret, and serving it fancy. I know, it sounds like a lot of poetic mumbo jumbo describing one's personal hell, but bro was kinda spittin'. Now, before we wrap up season 1, there are little caveats here and there worth mentioning. On multiple occasions, Derrick would post his phone number and email address for people to message him, and apparently there was a time when he was surprisingly active, though now it seems like his email is disabled. And even though I'm gonna have to live and die with the fact that I'll probably never get a chance to email Derrick fucking Thompson, I could still admire how much engagement and effort was put into this. In another video's comment section, there is a channel under the name of Tobias Harrow, a lead investigator, who mentions how the comment sections are heavily moderated, which, let's be real, doesn't seem too far off from Derrick's nature, as now he seems to be going off the deep end. I mean, he even uploads a tutorial on how to soundproof a room, which is totally not suspicious in the slightest, especially not from a man who was brandishing a bloody knife earlier. I'm not frightened at all. The final video, Dear Eric, begins with Derrick talking about his plans on reaching out towards more people when suddenly a woman bursts in and hits Derrick with a blunt object. And right at that moment of impact, the video switches to color and we hear her say,
"Finally, it's over. You can rest now."
When looking at the description, it contains a message from Eric's sister stating how she avenged her brother's death and how Derrick won't be able to hurt anyone anymore. So what exactly happened? Well, when looking at this season from front to back, it's quite easy to follow. Derrick is the leader of some satanic cult who has been using YouTube to spread the word and potentially pick up new recruits. He promises people happiness, but soon devolves into talking about obedience, wanting people to be submissive to his rulings. At some point, there was someone named Eric who wasn't having it, resulting in him being killed by Derrick. And judging by his behavior and soundproofing tutorial, this isn't his first rodeo involving murder. Eventually, Eric's sister tracks down Derrick and strikes him down, allowing Eric's spirit to rest in peace. Like I said, it's simple and straight to the point. However, there's still a sense of ambiguity lingering in the air, because who was Derrick Thompson really? How deep does his cult go? How deep does his evil go? And if Derrick's reign of terror was put to a stop, why is there a season 2? Season 2 is where things start to become more complex and the lore behind the world of Derrick Thompson starts to expand. And while this does open the path towards interesting directions, there are also a lot of speed bumps to get through. And this is definitely the case with what I like to call the first act of Season 2. There are over 100 videos in this playlist, but if I'm being honest, you could skip through about half of these and wouldn't miss anything. The first 60 or so videos definitely drop interesting tidbits on how the cult functions, as well as some quirky characters who inhabit it, but they feel more like promo to get people interested in looking into the channel, or to have a greater chance of popping up into someone's feed based on the sheer abundance. But while there are some fun videos, there are also plenty more that are basically filler. The AI videos in particular I found to be disappointing, mainly because I'm pretty much anti-AI to begin with, but I also feel like they squander the creativity of the channel. In context with the story as a whole, I can kinda see what it's trying to convey, since I believe these videos are posted by Derrick's followers who are trying to bring their master back, and I guess it isn't too far off from the slop content becoming more prevalent nowadays. It's certainly keeping in touch with the times, I guess, but I just wish there was a better way to do this without using AI as a crutch. For example, a lot of the AI-generated songs about Derrick Thompson are awful, and they don't really add much to the overall narrative. In fact, there are some videos such as Ballad of Wondrous Thompson where the opening lyrics literally sounds like an AI prompt.
Song about worshiping Derrick Thompson.
And it's things like that that honestly rub me the wrong way. Meanwhile, you look at another video where Derrick sings holiday tunes over an instrumental sounding like if Daniel Johnston worshipped Satan, and it feels much more thought out and kind of hilarious as well.
Overseen choirs of angels sing in exaltation.
Now, you could say I'm making a bigger deal out of this than I should and going off topic, but I'm getting somewhere with this. I understand how these videos are aiming to get people's attention and build intrigue. However, there are better ways to do it that don't involve AI. Or heck, even those videos that consist of a single image and a song on top of it. And the fact that there are so many of them makes getting through the first half of Season 2 feel like a slog. Personally, I feel like the ads have already succeeded in getting people's attention, and because of that, more focus should have gone into making original content that adds on to the storyline. But I'm not going to act like the first act is a total wasteland, because we do get some more information on how the cult functions if we look in the right places. However, if I were to go through every video, we'd be here forever, so I'm going to give an overview on what I've found. So, as of now, there appears to be 4 notable people in this cult: Sarathol, Bossman, Phil, and Big Friend. Sarathol is a monstrous fish that Derrick has relations with, mainly because of how he feeds Sarathol the remains of non-believers. Boss Man appears to be some dark-cloaked demon, maybe some kind of Satan incarnate. Big Friend looks a lot like Derrick, but with darker eyes, which makes sense if you look in the comments and see the phrase, Big Friend loves you a lot. And then there's Phil, that wooden doll who first appeared in Season 1, but is much more prevalent this time around, and let me tell you, he's quite the character. Whenever he pops up on screen, he normally talks shit about Derrick, the cult, and even some of the secret messages in these videos. And occasionally, he also delivers such classic gems like this.
How does all the success and the fame not get to you? Well, the simple answer is because Phil is always chill.
I never thought I'd say this, but in a world that involves a satanic cult, murders, and other oddities, somehow the wooden doll is the most attention-grabbing. Phil can be really funny at times, and he actually does have a weird backstory in relation to Derrick and how he gained sentience. But that's another story for a later time. Back to Season 2, there's a countdown that's supposed to end on Halloween, which is when a ritual will be performed to resurrect Derrick after he was killed back in Season 1. Around this time, the channel seems to be run by Jebediah Howard, one of Derrick's most senior and trusted members, and Martell, a professional voiceover artist from Hollywood who does promotional work for Derrick. We get little glimpses into the horrors found in the cult, such as seeing where the disobedient lay, lessons towards new members, and people glazing the ever-loving shit out of Derrick. And not just in the videos, but also in the comment section, because, wow, you people are down bad. Suddenly, the countdown is halted, now reading the message, "You ruined it." What the fuck did I do? And if that wasn't enough, the channel suddenly turns Christian and occasionally cuts back to the cult's hideout, now looking barren. Now, color me curious, but all this Christian stuff seems out of pocket for a satanic cult. And if we look deeper into the comment section, the channel gives some mixed signals towards the audience, begging not to bring Derrick back, but also simultaneously asking about specific details for a ritual to bring Derrick back. The Christian facade starts to fade in Copy of Dawnward Guides, which shows someone wearing a gorilla costume and just standing there menacingly. And in the following video, there's a profile in the comments section under 8-Man Kid who directs people to go to Tobias Harrow's community post and leave a comment on where to stand for the ritual to resurrect Derrick, also known as the Ritual of Defilement. And sure enough, someone gives an answer and Derrick returns. So after all this time, Derrick finally comes back, stating how he was on vacation, how he learned to appreciate the little things, and comes across as being more confident in himself, as well as slightly cocky. We hit a bit of a coda here, with Derrick mainly aura farming in the dark, some spare promo videos saying how cool Derrick is, or a PSA for new followers, or some weird stuff like an advertisement for Derrick Thompson soda. Get that Kool-Aid shit away from me. It all seems like it's there to brainwash anyone gullible or vulnerable enough to fall for this cult shit. So finally, we reach what I believe is the true start for Season 2, Friendship and Acceptance, which is about, 83 videos in. Now, in one breath, it was such a relief to get towards this section of Season 2 because it's very similar to the setup in Season 1, but with much better acting and more variety. However, if I'm being real, I did not need to go through all this filler in order to reach this point. In my opinion, you could take every video that happened before Friendship and Acceptance and put it in a separate playlist titled Intermission, and that would honestly make things much more manageable. But that's just me. These videos, which focus primarily on Derrick and whatever's going on in his mind, I think are put together very well. They follow a simple formula where Derrick talks to the viewer about himself, how the cult functions, and anything else that pops up in his head, then cuts to a random segment and cuts back to Derrick, who gives some closing thoughts. Derrick is much more open and confident this time around, which I think is great because it allows his character to blossom and show different sides of himself. The lack of editing and Derrick repeating the same lines over and over again really hones in on the awkward energy. It feels like someone who has a lot of thoughts running through his head but has trouble expressing it. And I really like the variety of the different segments spliced in between Derrick talking, whether they be eerie or cryptic or a borderline shitpost. Going through these videos, Derrick first stresses the importance of friendship and connection, mapping out how it progressed through different stages of evolution. He breaks down different aspects of the cult and why they're a necessity and help things run smoothly, including purging of all things. In one instance, Derrick begins to open up and talk about how he sees himself as a ruler of the free world, and how there are people like Eric, remember him, who wrong him, and how when he says the light blinds you, he's referring to people that give him false hope. After crashing out, it cuts to the swirl, which feels like it's trying to put the viewer under hypnosis, although I certainly didn't expect Derrick to get into ASMR. Something I get from his reflections on having a part of yourself that feels empty is that Derrick's spirit almost feels like a vessel for something evil, or at least a part of something more complex. In another video, Derrick starts throwing shade at someone who's disrespectful and doesn't mind their own business. My money's on Phil, but that's just a theory. It's also worth mentioning that there's a section titled Absolution, which was removed but could be viewed on Vimeo. It tells the story of two people who come across two doors, one with a pentagram and the other with an angel. A woman entered the former, where she felt happy as she entered a forest filled with warmth, while a boy entered the latter, where he was greeted with a cold forest. It cuts to a photo of a dead body with loud noises of crying. In another sermon, Derrick mentions catching a glimpse into the hidden wounds of the world, as well as threads of mistakes holding the world together. And now is when we reach the Derrick Thompson special, which runs at a staggering 86 minutes. It's basically an extended cut of the prior videos, but with more segments and more footage of Derrick speaking. At first, Derrick does his usual shtick about how one should feel accepted in his community and how things should function, but as the video progresses, he starts breaking down, showing signs of regret and melancholy. He laments about not wanting death, even going as far as to apologizing to Eric, how he doesn't want to be labeled as a cult. Shit, my bad, Chief. As well as having this lingering feeling that the end is near. This is broken up by different segments, which are actually broken down quite thoroughly by Dotting Dot in the comment section, so shout out to them. You can look deeper into that comment if you want to, but here are some things that stood out to me in particular. There are a lot of key moments, such as the retracing your steps section, that supposedly make greater sense when reading into the book, which deepens the Derrick Thompson lore, as well as introducing new characters that reside in the cult. The sense of the end being near, as I mentioned before, is most likely caused by the fact that the angels are closing in on Derrick and the people around him. There's also the fact that Derrick has apparently been around since 1904, which could explain some of the deep connections he has, both with his devoted followers and people outside of the cult. Basically, if I were to condense this special in a nutshell, it acts as a way to add more details to the lore, as well as some unexplained questions to be further expanded upon for further releases. We reach the final video, Sincerely Yours, in which Eric's sister, whose name is now revealed to be Seraph Reckoning, comes in and kills Derrick again. It also brings back a similar motif of things switching back to color, though one little detail I've come to notice is that the song that plays here was also used in an earlier video when the channel initially turned Christian. So is this a sign that the angels have come in and ended Derrick's reign of terror? Probably. All in all, Season 2 has a lot of great moments, but there's also some slop you have to get through in order to get to the good stuff. The main plotline is also rather easy to follow along, as it seems like Derrick's time has come to an end, and now it feels like the creator is more concerned with adding more details in terms of world building and what led up to that moment, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with exploring characters and set pieces even further, but I just wish there was a better build up and that there was more purpose behind these choices. Also, fuck AI. But now we gotta shift our focus from Derrick Thompson and look into another notable figure, Tobias Harrow. So, remember that investigator I mentioned way back when? That man's name is Tobias, an 82-year-old man who's done some vigorous research into Derrick. He has his own YouTube channel where his most notable videos are his interviews with Derrick, but there are also archival videos, mainly audio ones, as well as a list of characters that seem to carry significance in one way or another. And then there's the book that Tobias made, the Infernal Ledger, which acts as a companion piece to the Derrick Thompson YouTube channel, breaking down a lot of the lore surrounding it. Now, before I delve into the book, I'm going to give another spoiler warning and recommend people check out the book for themselves. Also, every once in a while, I'll be mixing in little tidbits I got from the interviews to fill in some empty spaces. And looking back on the book as a whole, there are moments where things become a little overwhelming and hard to follow, but I'll try my best to make things as cohesive as possible. So let's begin. Derrick Thompson was born on July 2nd, 1904 in Delavan, Illinois. His father was a blacksmith and carpenter, while his mother was a midwife and a herbalist. They were described as loving but firm, particularly the mother, who demanded perfection in every pursuit. Derrick was once smacked with a spade for forgetting to feed the flames of a fire. Even at a young age, Derrick was basically an outsider, mainly finding joy in messing around with his dad's tools, as well as having a fascination with fire and its warmth. So I'm sure this kid will grow up to be a respectable adult, surely. Derrick started going to school in 1912, and while in second grade, he met a kid named Elias, who was the first person Derrick was remotely friendly with. What starts as a friendly game of tag soon devolves into a fight once recess has ended and Derrick demands that Elias plays with him more. When he doesn't get his way, Derrick does the only logical thing and ties Elias to a post and hits him with a rock. When a teacher spots them, Derrick lies and says they were only playing, forcing Elias to go along with it. It's easy to see this instance carrying over into how Derrick's mind functions to this day, where he wants to have complete control in a relationship, and when things don't go his way, he turns to violence. One day, Derrick's mother reads him the story of The Snake and the Mongoose. The story follows a mongoose who is left behind by his peers and develops a deep resentment towards them. When he returns home, he sees that everyone has been slaughtered by a snake. When the mongoose asks to be spared, the snake offers him a chance for endless tranquility. After hearing the mongoose lament about not feeling welcome and that he wanted to be a part of something greater, the snake offers a deal. If the mongoose helps her rule the Sahara, he will live life to its fullest. Under the snake's wing, the mongoose would bring unsuspecting victims to the den to be killed. The mongoose has now found a place where he belongs, now playing with the snake in his new home. Back to reality, Derrick's listening to this and is thinking, he's literally me, for real, for real. Not only that, but his mother tells him that the meaning of life is seen in books like The Grand Grimoire and Songs of the Spirits. So, yeah, no wonder why his mind's all messed up. Derrick's first job involved landscaping, which I'm sure he had a blast with considering his love for sharp objects. But the job that truly changed the trajectory of his life was in 1936, when he was working as a columnist for the Briarfield Herald. At first, he had a promising career, earning 50 cents an hour, but one day, he wrote an article titled Food for Thought, which is basically pro-Satanist, going as far as to saying the devil is getting a better reputation than more politicians, which I mean, based. But this ends up being too based for people to handle, especially for the 1930s. And Derrick is fired. Obviously, Derrick doesn't take this well and spends the night listening to the radio, fantasizing about being warm in the depths of hell as he drifts off to sleep. Cute. The next day, Derrick wanders the streets and hangs out with a homeless man named Jake Caldwell, to whom he gives his earnings from the Briarfield Herald, and in return receives a doll named Phil. That night, Derrick has a conversation with Phil, and the two start to vibe with one another. By the way, there's a little note in the book that explains that the reason why Phil exists is because way back when, he was brought to life after a child's wish was granted by a genie, but the child was killed afterwards by the Grim Reaper, which cursed the doll to become spiteful. And before you ask, yes, everything I just said is canon. After gossiping about Derrick's old boss and some existential stuff, Derrick fantasizes about the ways he would kill his boss, and Phil is loving what he's hearing. He even insists that Derrick should carry out with his plan. And so they do. They break into the boss's office, talk some shit, and then Derrick brutally murders him by stabbing him with scissors over and over and over again. The two then dump his body in the river and are met by a giant fish who rips the body apart. That fish's name is Sarathol, who acts as a guard for the gates of hell residing in the Mackinac River in Illinois, which also flows directly into hell, apparently. So, Derrick, Phil, Sarathol, see how these names are coming together? In the morning, Derrick has a meltdown after reflecting on his actions, and Satan himself emerges from the floorboards. Satan speaks in Hebrew, expressing how Derrick's killing was seen as an act of spreading Satan's word. Derrick then pledges his devotion, promising to recruit people to the path of Satan in exchange for eternal youth. And that, my friends, is how the Derrick Thompson cult was formed in 1936 and has been active ever since. It's also worth pointing out how this particular moment in Derrick's life kind of mimics the mongoose and snake story from his childhood. This point in time also explains why Derrick has Phil and Sarathol hang around, why Derrick never ages, and why the cult is violent a lot of the time. But from here on out, the book starts to get more convoluted. Tobias shifts focus from Derrick and instead breaks off into talking about the councils of heaven and hell at Veyrath. And I'm probably mispronouncing so many words from this book. It's whatever. In both respective councils, we see mentions of notable figures of both heaven and hell who are preparing for some kind of holy war. However, there are also original figures that are introduced, such as Seraph Reckoning, Eric's sister and a member of Dawnward, Heaven's Army, and Ion, who represents the embodiment of existence, the mightiest being. After strategizing, a battle takes place in Veyrath, which is described thusly. The mists of dawn clung to Veyrath's scarred plain, a veil between the worlds where boundaries of heaven and hell blurred into chaos. Which is accurate because this whole battle was a clusterfuck to read. I think now would be a good time to pause and talk about how this book is formatted. Now, normally in a book, when there's a line of dialogue, there's a paragraph break to keep things organized. But this story is different because it does none of that. You basically have a line of dialogue, then a pair of asterisks that describe a character's actions or thoughts, followed by another line of dialogue, and so on, no breaks in between. And while there are times when this writing feels very stream of consciousness coded and almost comes across as some demented poetry, there are also moments where it makes the story feel really garbled. In this particular scene where it dumps a long list of characters and creatures fighting one another, I honestly have no idea what the fuck's going on. It feels like a mishmash of heaven, hell, and everything in between, to the point where it comes across like an abstraction. I kind of have to admire its ambition, reflecting the nature of light and shadow testing each other's determination, even though it's a little much. I don't know, I just wish there was a little more organization with this stuff. Going back to Derrick, by the 1950s, the cult had already had some followers, but had already been run out of a great deal of towns, jurisdictions, and counties. Eventually, Derrick manages to settle in the town of Lake Stone, Illinois. In April 1958, Derrick met a woman named Edith Pearl Harrison at a bar, who he proposed to the following year, and were officially married the year after that. The reason behind this is because Derrick wanted to experience a normal life outside the cult, and Edith kept her distance from Derrick's macabre dealings. They had children together, 2 boys named Devin and Lucy. They divorced amicably and very politely, but still lived together for 5 more years. Devin now works at a car dealership, while Lucy is senior vice president at Northern Trust. It's very off-putting to see that Derrick had a family in the midst of running a violent cult. By May 2022, about a year before the events of Season 1, Derrick's lair had grown exponentially since getting the word out has been much easier thanks to the internet. There's even an advanced cave system that contains hundreds of bedrooms, as well as kitchens, huge lounges, and other crazy shit. Which I gotta ask, how? I mean, I get that Satan works in mysterious ways, but holy hell, an aquarium? It's also at this point in time where Derrick surrounds himself with his most trusted colleagues such as Jebediah, Sergeant Harker, a former Iraq war veteran and Medal of Honor recipient, and Phil, who went from talking like some Chicago gangster to a loudmouth internet troll. The way they butt heads with each other reminds me of some dysfunctional family sitcom, but they must be doing something right considering the cult has been around this long. By the way, Derrick also keeps his writings in the Master Grounds, which date all the way back to March 1st, 1921, and is filled with morbid writings of the devious acts he carried out, such as kidnapping children, playing with lynched victims and roadkill, and hating on notable figures in history such as Abraham Lincoln and Susan B. Anthony. And you know it's bad when Tobias Harrow, the guy writing this, is like, I'm not going to share any of this shit. Around this time, there are 2 new members, a 19-year-old boy named Liam and an 18-year-old named Amelia, who are planning on an escape. One day, while assembling in the banquet hall, they come across a boy and a girl who are way too happy and cutesy sounding for their own good, almost sounding like a toddler from an anime. There's also another guy, Lucas, who also acts all childlike, even though he's 25 years old and is a business major. This is because Derrick is enforcing this brainwashing technique that causes people's minds to regress, making them easier to control. And wow, that sounded disgusting when I said that out loud. While in the banquet hall, Derrick comes out to deliver a sermon, but is constantly interrupted by Phil's ramblings and insults. He continues on without any bother, but when a brainwashed member speaks up, Derrick snaps and smashes the member's hands with a hammer for 12 whole minutes before calling someone over to lick the blood away. This manic episode is too much for Liam and Amelia to handle, and they decide to carry out with their escape plan. But before they could leave, Derrick spots them, but this time has a much more calm demeanor and even brings over Amelia's family to spend the day with. Of course, this is all a ruse, but an effective one at that, since Amelia and Liam decide to stay, with the latter being brought up to the 8th floor filled with luxury and awesomeness, which is actively warping Liam's brain. A couple days later, Amelia feels like something is wrong and uses her phone to contact 911, which is instead directed towards a local lake stone operator, and it isn't much help. One night, while Derrick is looking for some fresh victims, Amelia goes to talk sense into a brainwashed Liam wanting to leave. Liam eventually snaps out of his hypnosis when thinking about a violent act committed by the cult. Before they leave, a man stops them, saying they need to stay put while Derrick is away at the siege in Vyrath. The man has an embroidered stitch on his robe looking like the Eye of Providence, with a label reading, The Watcher. That's basically where the book ends, and then I assume after that are the events that occur in Season 1 and 2 on the YouTube channel, with Derrick reaching out towards the good people on YouTube, promising happiness before showing his more evil colors, though they seem tame in comparison to the shit he does in the book. But eventually, Derrick is killed by the Angel Seraph twice, but as of now, we're still left on a cliffhanger on what happened to Amelia and Liam, as well as whatever's going on in heaven and hell. So now that we've basically covered what we needed to cover, I have some final thoughts I need to share when looking at this world of Derrick Thompson as a whole. I obviously admire the amount of ambition that was put behind this, especially for a channel that has less than 10,000 subscribers as of me recording this. I feel like the creator, Derrick Tucker, knows how to get people's attention, especially with those ads, and I really enjoy those videos where Derrick talks in front of the camera. On the other hand, there were a lot more speed bumps than I anticipated. I already did a little rant on how much I dislike the AI content and images, so I'm not going to bother going into that again. Instead, I'd like to talk about how the story has been developed over time. I feel like in the center of the story is an interesting character study of a cult leader with an unpredictable, violent lifestyle, and there's so much you can do to build a world off of that. But one aspect that's important to take note of when world building is clarity. The advanced cave system was already pushing things, but the whole plot line with the councils of heaven and hell and dumping a whole slew of characters into the mix is just too much. And if there are aspects in the Derrick lore that are worth expanding upon, it should be more direct and have a stable narrative structure behind it. It's important to take your time when presenting a work of fiction, especially something this complex. I guess you can say I prefer the more straightforward psychological horror aspects of Derrick Thompson and am not really interested in the complexities of the fantasy side of things. But critiques aside, I think Derrick is onto something here. I like how this work of horror incorporates moments of awkwardness, and I like how there's a level of ambition that's reflected in some videos and portions of the book. And even in its rough moments, I can still vibe with the feeling of go big or go home. I feel like Derrick has a lot to learn moving forward, but I still had a great time going through his body of work, and I definitely see a ton of potential with future works. So if Derrick is watching this video, all I gotta say is keep up the good work. We'll all be rooting for you. After all, as a wise person once said, big friend loves you. This was quite the journey. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. Be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment down below if you enjoyed it. And if you really want to show your support, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos. And be sure to join the They Took Our Eyes Discord as well. It's the least you can do because I spent too much time getting this video together. I'm pretty sure there are a ton of other details that I left out or forgot to mention, which is all the more reason to check out the Derrick Thompson channel for yourself and let me know what you find. I also gotta give a special thanks to my Discord members. Y'all are awesome, and I'm just really happy that this video is now complete. Thanks again for watching. My name is Valentino, and I am out of here.